Thank you. Now we move on to our next news. Israeli strikes on South Lebanon have killed 1 person and injured 7 others. Footage of the strikes showed massive explosions and huge plumes of smoke. The Lebanese Health Ministry has said that 1 person was killed in Baalbek in eastern Lebanon, while 6 were injured in Nabateeh district, the south, and 1 in the coastal city of Sidon. The Israeli military has claimed that it had targeted several Hezbollah facilities and a site used by the environmental group Green Without Borders. It has accused the group, which is under U.S. sanctions, of being a front for Hezbollah. Lebanese President Joseph Aoun has condemned the attack as a breach of the ceasefire in place since last year. Israel has been continuously striking in South Lebanon, targeting Hezbollah facilities. Now for this discussion, we're joined by Daniela Bloom. She's a political commentator, joins us live from Los Angeles. Thank you very much, Daniela, for joining us. Good to see you. Daniela, can you tell us a little bit about this environmental group called Green Without Borders and what's their connection, if any, to Hezbollah?
Well, again, this was a targeted strike by the IDF, specifically on a facility that was carrying heavy machinery that looked like they had every reason to believe this was a facility that would embolden Hezbollah once again to gain strength in Lebanon. This was a targeted attack. There was only 1 civilian casualty. The president himself understands that there's no place in Lebanon for Hezbollah to gain strength again. And if there is not enough checks and balances on the ground, whether it's from him or the UN, then Israel will do what it needs to do to ensure that Hezbollah does not gain strength again.
And Daniela, can you tell us why in particular this ceasefire is so fragile and it's not holding up?
The whole area is fragile. It's very important, though, that we believe in peace through strength. This is why President Trump has been able to do the impossible. Without deterrence, without fear, we have nothing. Hezbollah gets its funds primarily from Iran, and Iran has been set back many, many years from the 12-day war operation back in June with the U.S. and Israel joining forces. It is fragile, but I also am encouraged by the recent Abraham Accords expanding and normalize relations through capitalism as opposed to Islamic fundamentalism, hopefully turns a page in the Middle East.
Yes, hopefully. Thank you very much, Daniela, for sharing that insight as a political commentator from LA. Now we move on to our next news. Scuffles broke out and arrests were made as demonstrators continued outside the Broadview ICE facility in Chicago, United States. Dozens of protesters carrying signs, American flags, and wearing protective gear gathered outside the facility, chanting and shouting. The protests marks the 5th consecutive demonstrations at the Chicago Processing Center. Meanwhile, occasional pushing and shoving broke out between protesters and police officers, where the police has made at least 10 arrests in the first few hours of the protests. Some protesters have reacted to the situation. Let's listen into what they have said.
Trump is trying to get Chicago to bow down. He's trying to get the entire country to bow down to his authoritarianism. He's trying to take away every one of our rights, to say that we can't protest, we can't dissent, we can't stand up for our neighbors being illegally abducted. And we're out here to say we're not going to take that. We're going to keep exercising our rights. We're going to keep standing up for our neighbors. It's really disgusting what's happening right now, and it's completely antithetical to the Constitution and to every right that we have in this country.
What brought me out here today is seeing the amount of hatred, intolerance, and violence that have been enacted on people who are loving their country, who pledge their allegiance to this nation, who bleed red, white, and blue, who are proud American patriots. I think that's absolutely intolerable and inexcusable, something we should never stand for. I've personally been assaulted for holding an American flag. I've had the flag attempted to be ripped out of my hand and the flag broken in half. I think that's shameful. I've seen people threaten death on ice stage and tell them they're going to be dead in 2 years, they're going to be kidnapped, they're going to be assaulted. And regardless of your political opinion, you have the First Amendment right to stand here and voice your opinion peacefully. What you don't have the right to do is to threaten violence upon somebody or try to enact violence upon somebody.
Now for this discussion, we go back to Daniela Bloom. She's a political commentator, joins us live from LA. Thank you, Daniela, for staying with us. Now looking at this, what underlying political and social factors are driving these protests? And do you see any in LA as well?
Absolutely. We had major LA riots several months ago that resulted in tons of property damage, vandalism, physical altercations. And I was also around during the BLM riots of 2020 and 2021, where that ended up being $1 to $2 billion in damage across the nation. Trump is now back in office. And when you show that you cannot peacefully assemble, when you cannot govern yourselves in law and order, there will now be enforcement. And Trump is enacting just that. Unfortunately, under the Biden administration with open borders, many illegal aliens have been able to enter the country, a lot of them criminals, not all of them. But when you cross illegally, you are breaking the law, and sometimes you do need somewhat of an overcorrection to very irresponsible open border policies.
Thank you very much, Daniela, for joining us and sharing that insight throughout our news as a political commentator from LA. Now we move on to Asia. Tensions continue to escalate along the Pakistan-Afghanistan border as Pakistan's foreign ministry has condemned recent Afghan attacks as unprovoked actions aimed at destabilizing the border region. In a briefing, Pakistani Foreign Ministry spokesperson Shafqat Ali Khan has stated that the actions violate the peaceful and cooperative relations between the two nations. Let's listen in.
Pakistan is deeply concerned at the unwarranted aggression by the Afghan Taliban, Fitna al-Kharij, Fitna al-Hindustan, along the Pakistan-Afghanistan border on the nights of 11th-12th and then 14th-15th October 2025. Such unprovoked actions aimed at destabilizing the Pakistan-Afghanistan border belied the overall spirit of peaceful neighborhood and cooperative relations between the two neighboring countries. Pakistan, exercising its right of self-defense, not only effectively repulsed the assaults all along the border, but also inflicted heavy losses on Taliban forces and affiliated terrorist groups operating from the Afghan soil in terms of men, material, and infrastructure. These infrastructures were used to plan and facilitate terrorist attacks against Pakistan. Our targeted and precise defensive response was not targeted towards the Afghan civilian population. Unlike Taliban forces, we exercise extreme caution in our defensive responses to avoid loss of civilian lives. Both sides are making sincere efforts to find a positive resolution to this complex but solvable issue through constructive dialogue. Pakistan greatly values dialogue and diplomacy and a mutually beneficial relationship with Afghanistan.
And that's a wrap on the World Report. Keep watching Newsx World for more news updates from around the world.